Of Kemet, let's move on to meditation. In Kemetic philosophy, meditation is not simply relaxation or detachment. It is an act of alignment with one's divine consciousness. Modern spirituality, however, influenced by the Western esoteric traditions, has reduced meditation to a passive state, stripping it of its original function of reconnecting with the Ka in men and the Kat in women, divine consciousness. And we'll get into why modern spirituality has done it and what are its major influences, which we've already spoke about in our Raising of the Jed video. Modern spirituality's method of meditation detaches us from our ancestral identity, function, and divine mission. When you're telling people that meditation is just about some relaxation, about letting your thoughts drift, well, where are those thoughts coming from in the first place? According to Kemet, right? When you see statements like in the yogic tradition about the meditating on the heart, right? The hirida, meditating on the heart. From a Kemetic perspective, what are you meditating on your Ab about? What is your Ab reflecting as the moon, as that's the planetary body associated with the Ab? What are you reflecting on, right? The Ab is also a water vessel. What is in the waters of your Ab? What are you actually reflecting on? Is it good? Is it purified? What's there? And how could you engage the Ab and meditate on the Ab without dealing with the Ka? But let's talk about the history. Let's talk about the basis of, at least today, with modern spirituality and how they proceed. So one of the issues with modern spirituality, Western esoteric traditions, is that they constantly claim or try to establish their legitimacy by basing it back in Kemet, meaning people, black Kemet. Right. Now, there's many problems with that. One, because a lot of things say that that's not true. Two, the time in which they usually trace their stuff, Kushite methods, are no longer there. A lot of cream was poured into coffee when a lot of them say that they trace their lineage to. Now, a lot of the Greek philosophers, where you get your 7 Hermetic principles and things like that, which is said to be influenced by Kemet, is really a Greek, a Hellenistic filter on what they believed Kemet, people in Kemet were saying, what they interpreted about what they saw on the walls, and also what some priests told them, but still repackaged in their cultural forms. And it's very important to say that because these Hermetic principles, the Kabbalion, come down into modern spirituality, Western esoteric traditions. It comes down into the law of attraction and things like that, which we first really hear about in the literature from Madame Blavatsky, the godmother of Western esoteric traditions as we know them now. And what's very important to understand is that when you read the Kabbalion, when you read the things that Madame Blavatsky is saying, it doesn't matter if they say that it came from the Greeks or these are Hermetic. It doesn't matter because their interpretation of it is based on Eurocentric philosophy. That's what it's based on. There were things that were translated out of Arab into Latin and into English, and then there are things that were direct translations into English. But either way, the interpretation of it. Remember, when the Europeans are getting these texts, we're talking about 1300s, 1400s, 1500s, 1600s. When they're getting these texts, they're coming out of what they have called the Dark Ages. They're coming into what they are calling the Renaissance. They're not digging these texts up from the dirt, just as priests are getting it from the Arabs. They get who translated it from and held on to it from the Greeks after they put their own cultural impetus on it. We see later with modern spirituality with the occult, European occult revival in the 19th and 20th century by Blavatsky and others. We see this, their own interpretation put on those same works. Madame Blavatsky took fragments of older Greek, Hindu, and even Kemetic ideas, mixed them with Western mysticism, and repackaged them as universal ancient truths. The Kabbalion, for example, was published in 1908, not 5,000 years ago. It is a modern book written by anonymous Western authors, not by ancient Kemetic sages. This is very important because most people are thinking that they're meditating based on principles, based on ideas that are 4,000 years ago. These are ancient principles. They are not. Even some of your yoga poses are not ancient. They were not doing those poses 5,000 years ago. There's a good amount of yoga poses that are from Eastern European gymnastics that were integrated in the early 1900s as India was going through another revolution or revitalization of its own interests in its own physical development. They added in new postures. So you sitting there thinking that this is what, in the past life you were doing, or what somebody in the ancient times was doing, and it is not. And we see that theme all across the Western esoteric traditions, all across modern spirituality. It is an act of deception. You think that it's old, and it is not. Not meditating on ancient truths, you're meditating on contemporary abstractions of what those ancient truths were. So, and we could filter that because we can place them above and right next to the Kemetic philosophy. This idea of a law of attraction that we got, this so-called it's mind over matter thing that we have today, that you can just visualize and positively think your way into reality, change your world just by your thoughts. One of the Western world's most beloved books that came out around the time of this law of attraction, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Turns out that Napoleon Hill himself was a con man. CoffeeZilla did a really good video on this on YouTube. Go check that out. So this idea that you can just, in modern self-help people do the same thing. You got to positively think yourself into reality. It's not the situation. It's not the people. It's not the institutionalized aspects of it. It's just you, right? This individualistic idea, which is, once again, it's a part of the linear, vertically integrated model of European society, that everything's about you, that you did it, it's your fault, and the way to get out of it is that it's all on you. We didn't think positively enough. So when we look at the law of attraction, it focuses on manifesting desires through thoughts and affirmations, implying that thinking positively will attract wealth, love, etc. In Kemetic philosophy, manifestation isn't about personal desire, it's about living in alignment with Ma'at, with truth, with balance, with your astrology chart, with what is transiting in the heavens. That is what Ma'at is. You don't, quote, attract things by thought alone. You act in harmony with your divine purpose, your Ka, right? Many in African traditions, they often say what would be the equivalent of your Ka. If you have this good, it's because of your Ka. If you have this so-called bad or it doesn't work out, it's because of your Ka. That is consistent in all of the traditions, right? So, as I said earlier, modern meditation, Western esoteric, it does not serve the needs of Black people. They're incomplete tools, because here they are telling you that all you have to do is visualize this, and they're not including your Ka, right? Let's go to the 7 Hermetic principles. Let's just focus on the one of them, which is mentalism, right? The idea that the universe is purely mental. That's rooted in Western idealism, not Kemetic spirituality, right? We could even argue that that's not even rooted in Greco-Roman thought, that everything is all mind and everything is all in your mind, everything is all in your eye, what you're going to do. So you can see how they're reading these Kemetic texts about the heart being weighed. They're reading things about the eye being wisdom, but you can see that they truly are not understanding it, because it is not in the context, the cultural context, the ancestral context of who they are. Also proof that they were not the ancient Kemites, right? They can't speak the language, can't tell you the cultural context, and you can tell where they're misinterpreting things. Kemet didn't just see reality as just a mental or spiritual. Life was about the integration of the physical, spiritual, in a holistic system, right? It's not just a mental exercise. If I want to establish stability in life, Jed, I don't just think about it. If I want to establish the 14 Ka, let's say I want to establish the Was Ka, I don't just think about it. I could meditate and visualize myself holding the Was scepter, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Was is going to be, I'm going to be able to manifest that, because also Was would mean that I have to have certain, Was would mean that I have to have certain vibrations, certain sounds, certain heka. Was would mean that I got to look at my nervous system, right? What's going on in my nervous system? What's going on with my posture that's negatively influencing my nervous system, so that the Was, possibly why the Was energy is not manifesting? What's going on with Mars in my chart, to understand why Was may or may not manifest? It's a holistic system. I'm not just going to think it into reality. And another big issue when it comes to Western esoteric traditions and modern spirituality is that this concept that we constantly use about manifesting, right? Versus in Kemet, could you say manifesting? Maybe, but you would most likely say alignment, right? Western systems teach you to control reality through thought, while Kemetic wisdom teaches you to align with these astrological forces, understanding your role in the universe rather than trying to just so-called bend it to your will, right? Bend it to your ob. When your heart is being weighed, if you go back to the image of the weighing of the heart ceremony, you have the Inter Shai there, right? Shy deals with your destiny, deals with giving you the forces also that you need to carry out your destiny, deals with also giving you the material, right? Your wealth, what you're gonna have, what you're not gonna have, right? What you have to protect, because in African, which we'll talk about later, in African spirituality, your destiny can be stolen from you, right? People can steal it from you or severely dampen it, right? So Shy gives you your wealth, gives you your energy, says what energy you're coming with. Maybe this person's coming with fire, maybe you're coming with water. Even if you might have the same role, right? How you approach it is going to be a little different. So when you talk about bending the forces to your will, it's that are you even in alignment with the force that you were given, right? If you were given fire or metal from classical Chinese medicine perspective and you don't do any cardio, you could lift weights and build your earth energy all you want. You could do a lot of yoga and build your wood and your air energy all you want. But if you do not do your breathing, if you do not do your cardio to raise the fire, to raise the metal energy, you're not going to get what you're supposed to, you're ultimately not going to be able to be successful in doing what you need to do. Add that to the nuance of your ka and stuff, being there or not being there is added to the nuance of your ka not having your ka there as well. You were given a specific form of energy. That's what you bend to your will, right? Also, the other problem, as I said earlier, Western esoteric tradition is that it promotes this individualism over this interconnectedness. You are not here existing by yourself, even when your heart is weighed. It's funny about our interpretations about this ceremony because it speaks to the linear vertical oppositional model of European countries and how they view spirituality versus the cyclical horizontal worldview of how we view it. When this concept of weighing the heart has been presented to us and as an individualistic concept, right? When you are declared Ma'akeru, it's not just you that is affected by it. It is your descendants. It is those that came before you. It is your ancestors. How do we know that? Because the word Medu, word, right? The words that are way. The word Medu also means bloodline. It means seed. It means offspring. This is where the Europeans get this concept of sins of the father. This is where we get the concept in court of testifying, right? It's all in this because Medu also means phallus, right? And in certain concepts in the black community in the hood, we talk about dudes lying on there, right? DICK. Right? All of those are remnants of the philosophies of ancient Kemet, of your words and the power of your words and the effect of your behavior in a interconnected and communal process. Not just an individual. I'm declared Ma'akeru, so now I'm enlightened and I move on and do what I want. That's a European thing. No one ever said that in Kemet. Definitely, and if they ever said it, it was after the 22nd dynasty, the New King 26th dynasty. If they were saying stuff like that in 29th dynasty, yeah, go ahead. Because even the weighing of the heart ceremony, the context in which we get that is even in the New Kingdom. So different conversation. So with the Subek Ra Meditation System, with the Subek Ra Meditation System, we don't rely on recycled, repackaged ideas. Right? We're rooted in authentic Kemetic principles, focusing on the balance of instinct, wisdom, spirit, and purpose. It's not about manifesting your desires. It's about mastering your instincts, awakening your wisdom, and living in alignment with your divine purpose and your ancestors. Right? This is ancient wisdom. This is ancient truths. Right? This is not some contemporary idea or perception of what might have been said, because we see it in the other African traditions. We see it in what the Kemites said themselves, what the Nubians said themselves. We hear it in what our ancestors are saying to us now when we invoke them, when they speak to us. Another issue in adjusting the Western model of meditation, which is different from the Subek Ra Meditation System, which addresses the full cycle of behavior, is that their meditation scripts, based in Western psychology, based in operating classical conditioning, ultimately does not work for Black people. We, in particular, came from, it wasn't our first time meditating, but we used meditation scripts from Ra Un Nefer Amen, someone who was a guru in the Kemetic spiritual space, right, for a very long time. We used his meditation script process, and not just from our personal experience, ultimately it didn't really lead to a true active transformation of who we are. Now that's nuanced. You could not transform. It may not just be the script alone. It could just be because you're doing it at the wrong time astrologically. It could be that there's opposing forces, meaning psychic attacks, all those things opposing you. It could be that you have not connected with your Ka. There's a nuance of reasons why these meditation scripts or these linear based models that we see Western meditation do not work. And I'm going to say in our personal experience, it didn't work because, well, one, because of our Ka, but also because a linear based model of behavior, right, in the Western world is based on man being a thinking animal. These meditation scripts do not address you not having a Ka, does not really address your Ab. What it does is it frames that everything you do is based on triggers, impulses, instincts, and reinforcement. The same way you would train a dog, same way you would train a lion. Now, why does classical conditioning work better for animals than it does for humans? Instinct versus reflection. Animals respond primarily to instincts, reflexes, making them highly trainable. Humans with a developed prefrontal cortex, and that is a scale of its development, can reflect, override impulses, and choose their reactions, making simple conditioning ineffective for long-term behavior. The linear model of meditation script that is used at Osiris, right, and is used in other places is one that only from a Kemetic perspective deals with your Kati. It only deals with your animal instincts, right? Not touching the body, right? It's definitely not really dealing with the Ab in a manner that is harmonious, because even when it seeks to integrate certain ideas, certain thoughts, right? The 11 statements or laws, 11 laws. Even when you seek to integrate certain thoughts or other ideas into the mind, if the Ab, as the moon, is still not reflective of the Ka is not even there, then all you're going to do is be mixing things in that water, creating more impurity, more toxicity. There will be moments of relaxation, moments of clarity, but ultimately, because it's not really addressing the full cycle of behavior, ultimately because it is a linear oppositional model and it's only addressing the instincts, meaning fears, or something about your fears or your emotions, right? At a superficial level, at that, it's not really going to cause much change. Now, why is one of the reasons why it won't? Well, as Black people, all human beings have an ancestral memory, have a racial memory. The responses of all human beings are shaped by ancestral memory, spiritual beliefs, and cultural influences, making behavior more nuanced than pure stimulus response reflexes. You understand? You can't say that here's the trigger, this is my response, this is what I'm going to say. That's based off the fact of you being a dog, right? You might respond with fear to a situation because you come from a clan in which that situation was a taboo, but you would not know it. And as an African in diaspora, because we had not made those connections to our ancestors, you understand, right? It might be taboo for you to eat a certain thing, but you're repulsed by it, right? But maybe in this country, somebody might say, hey, you need to eat that, that's good for you. I know I'm repulsed by it. Why are you letting your instincts control you? Just do it, it's the right thing. But you don't understand that person's ancestors, their ancestral memory is saying, don't eat that thing, right? Or don't do that thing. They're repulsed by it, not because their hati is just, it's because there's a deeper ancestral memory on the negative effects of engaging in that behavior or eating that food, right? Let's make it even more plain. When we talk about Black people and our confidence, you can meditate till the cows come home about being confident. Let's say your sun is in Pisces, and you could do all this meditating to be confident all you want. But part of the issue with what you call Pisces has to do with purification, has to do with you taking on other people's energy, has to do with certain codependencies on other people. So you can say, I'm confident all I want, but if you do not deal with the fact that your sun is in Pisces and how to purify and how to deal with that, or that the transit might be happening and bringing that up, or maybe your sun is being aspected by Rahu. So there's a certain bit of manipulation that is occurring to why you're not confident. If you don't deal with that, that's just astrologically. Let's bring it down to politically. Black people we've all been conditioned to see ourselves as inferior beings. I can meditate and say I'm confident all I want, right? But if I don't deal with that ancestral memory, I don't deal with those political processes, right? And somebody might say, well, what happens when this other black person is confident, even with all that? Maybe their sun is in Aries. Maybe their sun is in Leo. And so they have a certain energetic and spiritual basis and maybe past life basis that may give them a little more. But I assure you, they will also suffer from a lack of confidence in some place in their life, just based on the environment in which we are born in. You're not going to trigger stimulus and affirm and see yourself living truth. You're not going to do that out of there. Another reason why it won't work in the real world based on a cyclical worldview is, right, feedback loops. You could do some research on it, being that I can visualize something and affirm something, but I'm not meditating for what happens when I actually go in a situation and it does not unfold the way that I visualized it, right? What message is sent to my subconscious? What message is sent to my kati about that situation? And what kind of new problems can be created through those feedback loops? This is why this linear way of meditating does not work. It's not real. It's not aligned with reality. It's not aligned with the cycles of heaven. I'll give another example of just the problems with only focusing on treating human beings as animals and only focus on instincts. My daughter, she has a stellium in what you call Aries. She's very motivated. She has a lot of energy. She likes to do what she wants to do. And when it comes to eating, she is very she likes to get up and she's just busy. She just likes to get up and walk around, do her own thing. And usually her mother feeds her. But when it came time for me to feed her, when it comes time for me to feed her, I'm not doing none of that. I'm not about to be getting down and dragging food all over the house. I got to clean it up because you just want to be free and you just want to do what you want to do. So you're going to sit here and we're going to eat this food. We're going to eat this together. And I was feeding her once and she was getting frustrated because I knew she wanted to get down. You're not getting down. Come on, eat. So she's eating, crying. The rebellion is coming some kind of way, right? And then she starts trying to eat what she wants to eat on the plate, right? She thinks she's a carnivore sometimes. And it's like, hey, no, you got to eat this first. Then you can get that, right? This is what they would call operant conditioning and training the animal instincts with rewards. So every now and then she eats most of the food that I need her to eat. Then I'll let her eat what she wants to eat. And I would do that back and forth, right? And so she's not crying through the whole thing, but she's crying at times, especially when she can't get down. So when she's finished eating, she gets down. She's crying a little. She comes up to me, she stands, and she puts her arms up, pick me up, and she says, hug. And I pick her up and I hug her and I say, this is a perfect example of the Subek Ra Meditation System, a perfect example of reality. Although from a Western psychology perspective, I was training her kati, I was training her instincts to sit down and eat. But while that was all happening with, hey, you're going to sit down and here eat, I'm going to train you in discipline, I'm going to beat your animal into submission, her heart, her consciousness is like, do you still love me though? Because the way that you are laying this discipline down on me or this structure, I don't know if you love me. I don't know if you have the same emotions for me. And I need to know that, Daddy. That's why she comes around and looks at me with the face and says, hug, right? Based on these meditation scripts and models in the Western world, that should not happen, right? Because a dog would not do that, right? A dog would not really do that. After you are training it in that manner, come around and be like, I'm not saying a dog won't come and show affection or anything like that, but in that manner in which a human being would do, right? Because at her age, for her to come around and do that means that she was reflecting. I see you're doing this, but she's thinking, are you being mean to me? Do you got a problem with me? You know what? And on top of me thinking you have a problem with me, I need to make sure that you don't have a problem with me. You see, that thinking, that strategy, that future, that all of that is the makeup of the spiritual anatomy of a human being. And it needs to be addressed whenever we meditate. So some might say, well, animals do think. So how do you separate an animal like a lioness making a strategy or a crocodile strategizing versus human thinking? Well, let me tell you how. Pattern recognition versus abstract reflection. Animals. Crocodiles use pattern recognition to ambush prey, learning over time where animals gather, e.g. at watering holes. Lionesses coordinate in hunts, adjusting their tactics based on terrain and prey behavior. This shows an ability to adapt behavior but does not indicate conscious reflection on choices. Instinct and memory drive their decisions. A human in a survival scenario doesn't just react based on past experiences. They can mentally simulate different choices, anticipate long-term consequences, and modify behavior based on moral, ethical, or spiritual principles. Another thing, strategic thinking versus metacognition. Animals, a lioness will alter her approach if prey becomes alert, but will not sit and philosophize about the concept of strategy. Humans can think outside immediate survival needs, reflect on past mistakes, forecast future outcomes, and teach others through abstract reasoning, all functions of a prefrontal cortex and functions also of a Ka, or just of a more developed Ab. Point 3. Learning and conditioning versus free will and self-direction. Animals. Trained behaviors in animals stick because their behavior primarily depends on external reinforcements rather than internal self-directed changes. Even intelligent animals like chimpanzees learn social hierarchy and tool use, but do not challenge the system, right? Questioning, why are you trying to dominate me, or the morality of dominance. Humans may unlearn behaviors, break conditioning, like overcoming generational trauma, and act contrary to survival instincts due to principles, spiritual beliefs, or personal growth. Let's even talk about the psychological term of Stockholm Syndrome, where somebody who's been kidnapped or been abused by somebody or in a cult. I learned this as a flight attendant. I worked for Delta Airlines for a few years. We were trained in this to understand if a plane was hijacked and stuff like that, how a passenger may act towards the hijacker. Stockholm Syndrome is something that came up. And you look deeper at Stockholm Syndrome, it's essentially somebody overriding their survival instincts. When you look at how people behave in cults and stuff like that, it's usually a behavior that overrides their survival instincts. Animals cannot do that. Right. And at another video, we'll go into even the brain structures involved in this to show you how we as people, human beings, are different, even in the parts of the brain that we use to make our choices and go about doing things, or even our instincts, how they may come across in us is not always the exact same way as a lion or a tiger or a bear. Once again, all this is to say that the Western model of behavioral transformation has its goods, has some things that will change, but ultimately the deeper levels of transformation cannot occur if it is not aligned with Ma'at, meaning if it's not aligned with your Ka, if it's not aligned with the astrological transits, if your chakra is not even ready to be purified in that manner, if it is not addressing something very specific to Black people, the deep ancestral trauma that is clouding us, as well as the foreign programming, as well as the things that are still happening to us right now. If it's not addressing that, then how are you going to really have active true transformation and true success? This is what the Subek Ra Meditation System. This is one of the reasons why the Subek Ra Meditation System is here. Now on to Kemetic meditation, which we call Katkaab, right? Body, soul, mind. Now, before we get deeper into Katkaab and why it's named that way, and its connection, cultural and spiritual connection to Kemet, we must understand that there's an even deeper understanding of consciousness from a Kemetic perspective, right? We talked about Western consciousness, we talked about a general overview of Kemetic consciousness and Meturok, right? Words and speech and physical development, where there's an even deeper aspect of consciousness which we need to talk about, and that is your ancestral consciousness. That is your Ka. That is your Ab that you do get from your mother. This is your maternal and paternal bloodlines, and that aspect of your so-called unconscious that deals with your ancestral memory, your genetic memory. As I said earlier, overcoming a lot of trauma that we have to deal with these bloodlines. We have to learn them, whether it's through a blood test or it's just through your ancestors speaking to you, or your own Ka Unter, whoever that is, telling you about who you are and what you are here to do. Of course, divination also assists with that and provides you a context and a pathway to tell you whatever, to guide you, to shape and structure what it is that they tell you. When we start with the paternal consciousness, which is heavily involved with the Ka. Now, the reason why Wuser is shown to be, I don't like saying archetype because archetype is a big Western thing, but for the sake of argument, let's just say the model of Ka is Wuser. This is why you see Subek go down and get him. This is why some people have misplaced or misunderstood the association with Wuser as consciousness, and therefore placed Wuser as everyone's consciousness. We see that a lot in so-called Kemetic gurus where they say that it's like Wuser is all of our identity, all of our consciousness. That couldn't be farther from the truth. The The difference between the I being below the throne and above the throne have to do with, as we describe consciousness as submerged and emerging out of the waters through Subek, but also reminding us of the fact that our ancestors is a major part of that consciousness. How do we know? Because one of the forms of Wuser that we see associated with Subek is Wuser Eti or Wuser Ati. Now, this word Ati or Eti is a word that means, has a relationship with dualization, has a relationship with manifestation. That's why a lot of times you see these two crocodiles when you see the definition. Now, Eti and Ati is a powerful and special word in African languages, because whether you look at the Cushitic branches of languages in the Sudan with the Maasai, or you look at the Akan and the Yoruba, or you look at the Bantu and the Zulu and the other tribes, the word and iti is in all of these languages, right? Odinala is another name of the Igbo religion. You have eti in Nubian languages, meaning father or ancestor. You have eti in Oromo, meaning to lead, to rule, like an ancestral authority. You have uti in the Swahili and Zulu, meaning spine, backbone, stability, right? Linked to the Jed and the backbone of Wuser, right? So Wuser eti is the father of kings, the pillar of ancestral power, and the force that connects the past to the present. You have, even within the concept of the Ori Inu that you see in Yoruba, you have this external manifestation that is called Odi. Excuse me. You have the T and D are interchangeable. So this idea, right, that we see from Ra Un Nefer Amen, another misinterpreted idea of Kemet, of that this is your identity and you're just this universal consciousness that exists in all races of people, is not even in alignment with any of the African traditions, because it's very specific about your ancestral consciousness, the blackness of your soul, the blackness of your spirit, the blackness of your ancestors. It's not talking about anyone else but you and your people, right? So this consciousness is also a part of our mission, right? The mission that you get from your content that you are here to do is also related to your own ancestral mission. Remember, Ka and Ak are palindromes. They are two sides to the same pole. Many times words to describe great ancestors, the sainted ancestors, are the same words used to describe the Ka. And so Wuser et Ati is bringing in the concepts of the zodiac sign of what you call Capricorn. Ancestral consciousness ensures that one's actions are aligned not only with personal destiny, with your Ka, but also with the legacy of the lineage and the collective well-being of the entire community. It is not an individualistic standpoint. It is not individual. You're not here living by yourself. So it is something that we will go deeper into on another video in the Subek Ra Meditation System. So comedic meditation, Katkaab. One of the other words, there's like two words, main words for meditation in Kemet. You have Kat, Ka-T, then you have Wat. Wat is about mastery, right? It's related to the entire Abawat, right? Also called Wawet. And Wat is more of a higher thing, has to do with royalty, with leaders, but it has to do a little more with royalty and leaders, but it can apply to anyone because it deals with mastery, it deals with paths, it deals with ways. This is what Abawat deals with. And so when we focus on the Kat, right, part of it, it is a pluralization of the Ka. It means thought, it means reflection, right, what we would call meditation today. That would be one word to describe meditation. But it's also a very important word because the Kat is also the definition, also has the definition of vagina, also has the definition of a cow. So by its very nature, from that definition, we're being told that meditation is about an internalization process, right? Meditation is about, the cow is about a nourishment process of nourishing yourself. So you say, what are you nourishing? What's being nourished is you reconnecting in your eye, being filled with the wisdom and nourishing yourself, whoever that deity is. Now, the definition of it being a vagina gives us even more information, right? Because what is a vagina? What is the purpose of a vagina, of a woman's vagina? She takes in the Ka. Penis, another definition of Ka is penis, is phallus. So with Kat, meditating, taking in the Ka, your own Ka, and being nourished by that Ka, which is the sperm, which is the seed that is ejaculated into the vagina, which creates new life, which regenerates life. which creates new things in the world. This is where the Europeans got the concept of manifesting. Do you see how these very specific spiritual concepts and even astrological concepts, how it was taken and stripped away and just said, mind over matter. Just manifest your will into reality by visualizing. Right? So meditation based on Western esoteric thought becomes a removal of the Ka and the Ab from the process. This allows meditation to become detached from ancestral identity, function, and divine mission. Right? And essentially, it is the epitome of what Ptah said in terms of one's having a loss of divine consciousness and one's Ab not being in the heart, being in the right place. This is epitome of what Ptah said about a living death. Because without the Ka, removing the Ka from meditation means that the Ab is left open. Your heart, your emotions, your will is left open without guidance, which means that it's subject to the external programming of the society politically. It's also subject to the programming of what you as a Ba, of a spirit, which you have brought back into this world from past lives. Think about that in the context of Black people. If you don't have a Ka, your Ab is open, then what is the political programming that we have? You're inferior. You don't know anything. Come do what we need you to do. Come march for us. Come fight for our rights. Right? We're not going to fight for yours, and you're going to be okay with that. Right? Those are the words and the waters of our Ab. And then we manifest it into reality. Because at the end of the day, that your Ab, this mind over matter thing, what they've taken is not that it is untrue in terms of spirituality, esoteric powers. But right? There's a lot of nuances. But for Black people, we have been manifesting the reality of other people. It's the ultimate Jedi mind trick that is spoken about behind the scenes in these societies. The melanin, the force that we are born with. Remember, melanin is the energy source. They're making military weapons out of melanin. At least they're letting us know right now. Right? If we're learning about this in 2024, 2025, 2015, it means that this has been going on since the 80s or 90s. Right? Melanin is the energy source. We are manifesting the reality through the programming of our Ab without the lack of our Ka. We are manifesting the reality of whatever that education, whatever that programming is, which is not in alignment with our ancestors or not alignment with our Ka. And another problem with the Western esoteric traditions that I left out is that this claiming that divinity is an absolute within all people. Ra Un Nefer Amen and other gurus talk about this divine aspect that we all made in the image and likeness of God and we all have this divinity. Not according to Kemet, not according to Kemetic thought, not according to Yoruba thought. These people ignore the reality, or they're not informed of the reality that if the Ka leaves, so does divinity. Kemetic and African traditions see divinity as something that is earned, that is kept in alignment through Ma'at. You can't be here to prove that you are divine or above animals, but then maintain this divinity and absolution. That's a contradiction against the purpose of creation. I'll say it again. These people will say that you are divine by nature, but then say that you're here to prove divinity. That's a contradiction. If divinity is an absolution, then what are you proving, right? From a Kemetic African perspective, it is not an absolution. It is the constant work of maintaining harmony with the cycles and with the work that you must do. So, Katkaab. The reason why we call meditation that and just don't leave it at Kat or Katkaab as some call it, leave it just in a spiritual and mental context, is because it's very clear that we physical body involved. When you look at the poses that people would sit in meditation and in Kemet, the name of some of these poses in yoga is like the thunderbolt pose. Some of them are the thunderbolt pose. When you look at different Medut that denote wisdom, when you look at different Medut of the Interu themselves, like Jehuti and the pose he's sitting in, or Abu, so-called Ampu, that he's sitting in, and you see these foot positions, you see these leg positions, these are all meditative postures. These are all postures in which, with work, they're all meditative postures. But with work, you have access to what the Western world will call wisdom. You can tap into more energy, you can tap into more power. For your Ka to remain in your body, to stay anchored, there's a multitude of relationships that it has within the physical body and with the physical body itself. And as I said earlier, we'll talk about that more when we get into the exercise system. We'll go more into this. Now, the importance of the physical body and exercise or yoga poses is that working on the physical body is one of the quickest ways to, as we would say, open up the way, right? If you were to try to go the other way and try to purify your mind, to try to welcome your Ka back, and let's just say that worked. Say your Ka came back. It's very likely that you would not be able to correctly filter out the messages and the wisdom that the Ka sends you, because the Ab would still be unpurified, the body would still be unpurified, or the body would be weak. Right? It's very important that we start, not in the linear aspect, but that we start with the purification of the physical bodies, that in the way that Abu and Abawat can open up the ways, open up the vessels, the Medu within our bodies, open up the pathways within our bodies, open up the nadis in the yogic tradition, the energy can stabilize. So to restate, the Subek Ra Meditation System's goal is to help people to purify and realign with their Ka and realign with their ancestors, to align their instincts and harness those instincts to align the Ab with cycles, with Ma'at, so that we can truly have a true transformation. This is what Black people need. This is what we need. This is what our children, this is what the next generations need. We've been involved with modern spirituality and Western esoteric traditions for about 60 years, and things have not gotten better for us. And that's by design, because the things are not really meant for us. They do not really speak to us. And this is not just in spirituality. It's not just in astrology. We see it in multiple areas of life where the things are not meant for us. They're not specific to us. They're more so-called universal. They're more for other people than it is for us. Now, before we get into our first talk about our public meditation, I want to get this out the way because I don't want it to sully the great work that we're about to do. Speak again towards Osiris Isis. Forgive me. Osiris Set and Rosicrucian is Reggie and Thoth Greekenberg. We, on the outside of this, we've been dealing with a legal battle, right? When most Black people know this, and people watching this are already aware of, at least in New York and other places, whether they call it gentrification or they call it some other name, that there is a effort, an intention by certain people to steal Black wealth through stealing homes, stealing brownstones. And this goes about all kinds of ways, from contract issues to litigation. And we are dealing with that legal battle with a property in New York. And from what we've been told, doing quite well with it, with some minor delays based upon all the different tactics that certain people use to slow down the process, process in a way that may cause a delay. As you know, one of the major tactics against Black people and Black homeowners is what I call attrition warfare, where they try to delay court, try to delay litigation, they try to do all these kind of delays in a way to pretty much starve you out so that you have no choice but to give up, or that you give up and you lose. That's one of the major tactics that is used all over the country. So we recently had like a minor hiccup and delay with some issues that were really 14th Amendment violations, actual criminal violations and violations of Black rights, which have been going on for a while. And what Osiris Isis did a couple hours later was put a post up about spiritual work and spiritual science. Now, after our Raising of the Jed video, in which we discuss and bring the first public, opposition or critique of Ra Un Nefer Amen's work, for a whole month, they said nothing at all. And then a few hours after we have a response in our legal case, they come out with this post. This is 30 days. They haven't said anything since we released our video, haven't tried to sell a winter solstice, nothing. Characteristic of what they've done over the last few years and few decades. Uncharacteristic posts of them. They are trying to be talking about motivation. Essentially, this is a motivational speech. And then they try to sell their product for the winter solstice. So something clearly changed after the Raising of the Jed video, right? So they make this post. It's very important to understand that when someone is talking about spiritual science, they're saying that the rituals, the meditations they did created a certain process. And not really so much speaking to the people who are still on Osiris Isis, but the people who left. The people who watched our videos when we were there, where we talked about certain rituals being done towards us. I don't see how this is not proof of that. How they contributed to 14th Amendment violations. They contributed to certain people trying to steal Black wealth. And they clearly are proud of it. Somehow it played into their master plan.
Yes, sir. and enjoying it, okay, you are sending an energy that will, correct that person's behavior. Many of us have experienced that. You see that? And if it doesn't correct the person, then it's between that person and God, and for lots of people, they get a divine spanking from God, not from us. Because what you want is the person to leave you alone, not mess with your stuff. You see, and you're not going to get that if you indulge the because what you want is the person to leave you alone, not mess with your stuff. You see, and you're not going to get that if you correct the person, then it's between that person and God, and for lots of people, they get a divine spanking from God, not from us. Because what you want
plan enough for them to try to sell their product, right? So as we said, not only is the work not grounded in Kemet or Black ancestral traditions and is more Europeanized and more, Indo-European model, but clearly even the practices and the goals and desires and the effects of their work is meant to take away from Black people by what he said. Now, I don't know if he did this post, if Thoth Griekenberg did the post, or if Daddy's little girl, his daughter, Aninsa Amen did it. I'm sorry. Not Daddy's little girl. His son, Aninsa, did it. Doesn't really matter. Now, it's important to say, this is 2025, it's important to say about these people as well, that they really need to stop trying to copy our work. Thoth, we've seen a lot of your, not all, but a lot of your astrological lectures. You have never said the word astrology or astronomy until we said it in September of 2024 in the first episode of Kemetic Astrology.
And with the science of astronomy, you've been able to notice that the triggers for things and the movements of the stars and the planets is like the hands on the clock. It's not the actual time, but it aligns with the cycles, the invisible forces and cycles. Right? So you begin to notice that when that star was there, when this astronomical phenomena came together, then this is what was happening on Earth.
Their proclivity and their ability. So Aries people are like this, and Gemini people are like, that's astrology, not astronomy, is the science of how astral energies, right, affect people's behavior.
You've never put anything in a circle. Rosicrucianist Reggie never put anything in a circle until we talked about the cyclical worldview of African cultures in Kemetic Astrology, episode 2 in October, right? All of a sudden, November, you're putting stuff in a circle and making it sound like this is the work that's been done for you. You said you've been in the priesthood for 43 years, Kemetic priesthood. You've never done it and never said it. And then you try to fool people recently in January by taking the middle pillar of your linear oppositional model, your Eurocentric teachings, taking the middle pillar, put it in a circle, putting the word cycles next to it to try to make it look like it's African, to try to make it look like it's cyclical, as we have talked about, as we have shown to the public. So Thoth, even when you went down to Atlanta for your lecture and you mentioned Black ancestral wisdom, these are none of your statements. You've never said anything. Reggie has never said anything like that. These are all statements of Astro Ra Nation. And you're regurgitating them, using them, attempting to copy and steal. And we see it filtering through in everything that he is saying and that he has said for 50 years. Let's get deeper into his conflicts with the fundamentals of Black ancestral traditions and African spirituality, which we will speak about from a Kemetic perspective of the Ka.
That some of these men even speak of women as being an imposition on their lives, as being a distraction. is not a Black ancestral perspective.
Mental differences in worldview between the Kemetic African perspective or the Black ancestral perspective and the Indo-European perspective, as these fundamental worldviews are operating under the surface in everything that we do. This tradition and also innovation to modern time, as this is also a tradition of Kemet and a tradition of Black ancestral cultures, to always make sure what you do and what you use fits the time.
Organization based on the principles of ancient Kemet, as well as our other Black ancestral wisdom systems that spread throughout the world, through prehistoric China, through.
And what makes it worse is that these people are in the back telling everybody else and been telling everybody for a few years that we are going down a dark path and we're going down the wrong way, yet they spare no time in copying us. Right? Remember, Reggie, in your lecture on December 22nd, where somebody asked about the 12 zodiac signs and the 12 meridians of acupuncture, which you always say is too hard to synchronize, even though it's been synchronized already, right? Remember when you said it came from the zodiac of Dendera?
Question about the 12 meridians, the 12 zodiac signs, and 12 cranial nerves.
The zodiac signs comes from the temple of Dendera in Egypt, and they connect to the spirit. Okay.
I guess you watched Kemetic Astrology episode 2, but you didn't quite understand it because the zodiac didn't begin with the zodiac of Dendera, and I didn't say that. But I understand that you're trying to listen, right? Right? Same video you also said for people to go study the hieroglyphic dictionary because of how we present the facts and the proof of the things we say through some screenshots of the language. There's multiple receipts. Even your website, right? Your website that you have now that Thoth tries to brag about is based upon our website that we had since February of 2024. Right? So the copying has not gone unnoticed. The regurgitating of the things that we say, right? All of a sudden, Reggie's December 22nd talking about exercise and stuff like that. Like, this guy never talks about exercise, but because we talked about it, now you want to talk about it. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because in African traditions, whether it's Igbo or Yoruba and even Kemet, there's a lot of talk of people trying to steal other people's destiny. Right? The Yoruba say you can't really steal it. It's called kadara. You can't really steal it too much. You could just slow it down with psychic attacks, with certain things. But I want people to go do some research into the concept of destiny swapping and how people do all kinds of rituals and copy all kinds of things. It's a form of energetic and spiritual vampirism. And in astrology, it comes across a lot in the 2-8 axis, comes across a lot in your 8th house. So that sign of your 8th house will usually tell you how that vampirism or how that theft may occur, or how it will try to occur from other people in life. Remember, in Kemet, protection was a big thing. Talismans, all African cultures, all indigenous cultures, having your talismans, your symbols, and certain protective rituals is always there. And it's not just because of the so-called dark spirits that are in the environment. It's also because of the envy or the so-called evil eye of other people. People who used to be our teachers, who said that we've gone a dark path and we're going down the wrong way, they should not be regurgitating and copying us. That doesn't make any sense. And their own people are very much confused about it. The Thoth Griekenberg, I don't want to hear you say astrological or astronomical because you don't even say it right. You repeat it, but don't even say it right. Okay. I don't want you talking about astrology anymore. Okay. You said that Venus governs Libra and Pisces. That's not true. You also said that the 12 zodiac, that our ancestors in Kemetic created the 12 zodiac signs by splitting up the sky into 12 divisions of 30 degrees, and whatever was in that division was the energy they used.
We say, okay, in this system, we're using a 12-fold categorization. So if you divide 360-degree circle, right, by 12, you get, it's my test to see if you're awake. 360 divided by 12. It's 30, obviously. Yeah, right. That's right. Yes, we're all awake. Right. 30 degrees. So somebody said this 30 degrees of space, if you take the sum total of the influences of the stars that are in that 30 degrees of space, it has this kind of characteristic energy. We'll call it the constellation of Aries, or the constellation of Gemini or Virgo or what have you. And over the millennia, we've observed that based on the positioning of these stars, it affects people's mentality and their proclivity and their ability. So Aries people are like this, and Gemini people are like, that's astrology, not astronomy, is the science of how astral energies, right, affect people's behavior.
Wow. And this guy is going around with a calendar saying how to meditate on astrology and that he knows Kemetic astrology. Wow. The Europeans, the Egyptologists don't even say stuff like that. They split the sky into 12 parts of 30 degrees and whatever energy was there. Are you serious, man? I didn't say that. You did that for me. And I don't think you got that from Rosicrucian's Reggie either, because he had his moments where he knows something about astrology. I think you can put that one on your own, man. But as I said, the receipts are here. We have them. I'm gonna do my work. But Thoth, every time he says something on Reggie, it's like, oh, now I gotta go another receipt of you regurgitating what we're saying.
Spirit is composed of 11 major faculties. You see that? And one of them, the 11th one, once it matures, becomes the 12th faculty. But let's keep it simple. 11
question. In the first session, you mentioned that there are actually 12 faculties, not 11. Is Sheps the 12th faculty?
No, there are two versions of Heru. One is Heru the Elder, and one is Heru the son of Oser and Oset. You see that? And now we're getting a little technical here. In other words, before we become awake, spiritually awake, we don't use our will as we should. We don't use our will to rise above, sins, rise above, giving in to our conditionings and things of that nature. We allow the world to control our intentions. So that's Heru the Elder, or Heru the Blind. You see that? And that's the will faculty that is given to us by nature. So that's the natural born weak will. So when through initiation, you create, a new Heru. You see, that's Heru, the son of Oser, and Oset meaning meditation. Oset is meditation, as a means of transforming the will into the son of the divine principle within us. So that's Heru, you see, that becomes the savior. So that's the 12th faculty. You see that? But once you perfect Heru, the son of Osetta, or said Heru, the elder passes, with all the living faculties.
I also left another part about Thoth. He's all of a sudden talking about exercise and stuff like that and spirituality. You never talked. People know that you exercise, but you never talked about it with spirituality until Kemetic Astrology, episode 3, planetary chakra model, where I talked about the Swadhisthana chakra and anterior pelvic tilt. And all of a sudden, you mentioned on December 26th that someone who can unite the physical exercise and the postural stuff that we have in our body and unite with spirituality is a true master. Well, thank you, Thoth.
Seriously, if you don't watch, if you're not aware of your posture and everything, you're doing this all day long. And the weight of your head, there's a whole thing about how the more your head tilts forward, the heavier the bearing load. So imagine a child anatomically, right? You're walking around doing this all, 4, 5, 6 hours a day. So I'm saying all of that to say we're different now, right? We've got different things to deal with. So it's not enough just to go. I mean, it's hard enough to go back and understand the ancient wisdom, but then to be able to take the ancient wisdom and apply it scientifically to the conditions and the people of today takes a master. So that's what we're in store for here.
Mind, body, and soul, or mind, body, and spirit. Right, there's this, it seems to be a holy grail sometimes, right, that people are always searching for. How do we truly unite this? I got this over here and got that over here, where the chakras, the Auraba, are a way to do that. And it goes both ways. You'll see in some of the medical literature, for example, of this connection between, in some of the Indian medical literature, you'll see that men who are having what they, Swadhisthana chakra, or what we call the Bennu chakra, planet Venus problem, that they also have an issue with their lumbosacral plexus, right? And then these men are experiencing back pain, but also experiencing sexual impotency problems. So they might prescribe for them some forward bends with yoga to open that center up. Right, from a fitness perspective, I would prescribe, hey, we're going to have to correct that anterior pelvic tilt that's causing your spine to dip in like this and the disc to push in on that nerve plexus associated with the Swadhisthana chakra. So your issues with the Swadhisthana chakra of fear, of low self-esteem, might not be because you are a bad person. It might just be that you need a physical alignment. You might have to go to a chiropractor. You might have to start doing some yoga. You might have to stop sitting so much, stretch out those hamstrings. They might be too tight. Even though 10 seconds after that, you said it was Reggie who did it, which is not true. He doesn't care anything about the physical body. I mean, he even said in volume 1 that you shouldn't waste your time exercising. You can use that energy for spiritual development. That ain't what our ancestors in Kemet said, or in Africa anywhere said, but hey, you guys follow a European model. So yeah, as I said, glad I just wanted to say something about this, the contribution to trying to undermine Black wealth. I want to say something about the copying and really bring it to light and bring it to the public so that people know. When you hear these people say this stuff, just know where they got it from. They're trying to leverage their 51 years of experience so that when other people come to our work, other people come to trying to understand Kemet from a Kemetic Black ancestral perspective, that they're going to think that this guy said it first. No, we don't use his system. We don't use his oracles. We don't use anything this guy says. And apparently the people are loving it, including their own people. So let's move on to the meditation. Now, the technique we use here at Ancestral Ra for our meditation is called Rise. Now, Rise means root, inhale, stretch, and exhale. Why is that important? Because as we said, our meditation is called Katkaab, right? The physical part, posture, is a very important thing. And in this society, in a sitting society, our backs have become very weak. Our lower backs have become very weak. Our pelvis is distorted. A lot of times when you see these diagrams of yoga poses or skeletons, they're not showing you what's really happening in the body. A lot of our pelvises are twisted to the left, twisted to the right. Our spines at the top are over, our heads are dipped over. And it's very important that we sit in postures and that we recognize and make that connection again in the body. Proprioception, this kind of, well, proprioception really has a lot to do with your feet, but this kind of intuitive balance of knowing where your body is in space and time. And part of why we lost that is because of our core muscles. Core musculature here is severely weakened from sitting. So we need to restore that. That's a part of the Ankh exercise system. But also we need to try our best to be aware of it during meditation. Right? I'm not saying keep your mind off because it can be very distracting, right? But we need to become aware of it, right? So root means ground yourself with a straight spine. One of the Kemetic processes is to meditate, on your knees, thunderbolt pose. It's not easy to do, especially if you don't have that flexibility or flow down there. It is not easy to do, but it's something that you can work yourself up to. I'm not even gonna lie, I'm still working on really getting my minutes up there with it. It's no minutes, 15 minutes. When you can probably sit there for 15 minutes, you're probably in a good place. When you can sit there for 10 minutes, you're in a good place. Anything higher, you're really great place. Inhale means inhale deeply, right? Now, we inhale into the vagus nerve, but we also try to simultaneously inhale into our mid to lower back, right? And into our mid to lower back. Stretch means feel your ribs expand, feel your abdomen expand. A lot of times, because of our postural distortions, when we're taught to breathe into our lower abdomen, only the stomach moves forward. The rib cage is not moving as it should, which is out, like wings and flapping. The rib cage is not moving out and the back does not move out. That's why when some of you tried for the first time, you're going to probably feel a heavy amount of tightness in your back and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't even really. Yeah, you're going to have to roll that out. You're going to have to get somebody to massage that out for you. It's easy to foam roll it out, release it so that the breath can really expand and the back of the rib cage can expand too. And that means that it's not just that the meditation will help you get into a trance and all that, but it also will energize you as your kidneys will be massaged by your lower to mid back being able to move outwardly. So you feel that stretch. It's the first S. And then E, exhale. Gently exhaling, relaxing while activating the lower abdomen, pulling in the bottom of the lower abdomen where you are pulling on the vagus nerve, which is which is a long nerve that connects from your lower abdomen up through your heart into your brainstem. out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, breathe out, in, out, in, out, breathe in, breathe out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, breathe out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, breathe in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, and breathe out, in, breathe out, in, and out, breathe in, and out, breathe in, out, in, out, in, out, breathe in, out, in, out, in, out, in, let's go, out, in, out, in, and out, in, 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 out. All of those thunderstorms signify the shocks, the insecurity, all of those painful things coming to the surface. So, hope you enjoyed that meditation. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe. We also have other meditations and other digital products that will be available for download in the coming future. See you on the next video.